Hello, everyone. Welcome to Masquerade Tea Party, the Otome podcast where we talk about everything OI, especially uh, literary analysis, character analysis, tropes, and trends. My name is Sapphire Tsuki. You can call me Saf. I'm the channel owner of Saf Says Let's Talk, and this is my co-host,
Hi,
Lilac
I am.
Lilia. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. I am Lila Lilac. Welcome to Masquerade Tea Party. So, what should we talk about first?
Well, first, we should talk about, well, let me first ask, how was your day?
Oh, my day is good. I've just been excited for this to start. Uh, it's something we've been thinking of doing for a long time, but either we were both lazy about it. And so, we didn't start until now.
And that is true. Sorry about that. So, this is going to be a podcast where we talk about everything Otome or Otome Isekai. And for that reason, I want to ask you, Lilia. I'm going to keep stumbling over
Lila.
that name. I can tell. Lila. What do you define as an Otome series?
So for me, basically, well, first I'll have to define what isekai is, because we know what Otome is. So isekai to me isn't just the tropes that we see in anime. Some guy, well, in Otome, it would be different. It'd be, usually it's a girl going into a villainess's body and then waking up and trying to survive in some form. But to me, an isekai in itself doesn't necessarily mean fantasy tropes that we see in modern anime isekais. You know, it just means like you're traveling into another world in some form. Like you could be going to another body. You could just be going into that fantasy world. And like I would consider Narnia an isekai. I also have an old game that I would consider an isekai, but I won't talk about that one today. So to me, Otome Isekai is just simply like an Otome series in an Isekai world. And so that can be pretty broad in what that means. But what we'll mostly be talking about is villainess isekais, or just different series that have the vibe of it. I go by vibes. Also, if you hear us saying vibes, please take a sip of tea every time you hear that, because you will hear it a lot.
You will. You absolutely will. After all, we're in it for the vibes.
Yes. Alright, Saf, why don't you go on your description?
Alright, so my description is a little bit broader than most people's. Most people think of Otome as only like, oh, the Otome series, Otome games, etc., where it's about, you know, dating simulation, basically. For me, it's a little bit different. I go off of the vibes. So if something is very close aesthetically to an Otome series, like, for example, a fantasy romance, which is not actually part of the Otome genre as is typically defined, but feels like an Otome series, then I consider it part of that genre. Likewise, there can be fantasy romance that don't fit that bill at all. Maybe because of their subject matter, maybe because of how the relationship is portrayed, or because the main character isn't actually the female, it's the male, but not from the perspective of someone involved in an isekai world. Additionally, if it matches the same typical tropes of the main focus being on the relationship and how that affects each character's role within their world, I think of that as being part of the otome genre as well. So, largely speaking, it's the vibe.
It's always the vibe.
And it's always the vibe. That said,
So
it is. Yes.
I would like to ask you a question if that is okay.
Of course.
Alright, so let's talk about how we both got into Otome and how it appeals to you as an individual.
Alright, well, I got into it in a little bit of a meandering path. I've always enjoyed josei and shoujo manga, which a lot of the time does have otome vibes to it, but also a lot of the time doesn't. For example, a lot of them are more modern than most otome series are. That said, what actually got me into the otome genre is I actually came into it from the isekai genre. So, from what I can remember, it was when that time I reincarnated as a slime and Shield Hero were very popular. And just starting out, so I would actually watch those, and then I read their light novels, which are amazing. You can say what you want about the series, but the books are better. But I read those, and then I went looking for new series after I had gotten a certain length in those. And then I ended up finding a couple of different manhwa, actually. This was when I was starting to get into manhwa, that were villainess manhwa, back when that was a new thing. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I kept reading that, and then I got into the otome games, which
Yeah,
really
you're much more of an otome game person than I am. I'm more on the webtoon side.
That's true. I do like a smattering of everything. The main thing that I have that's unique, though, is of all of my friends, I'm the only one who's really into the otome games scene. I have friends who also like otome games, one of whom may be watching this, actually. And they're also very, very interesting, but that's how I got into it. But enough about me and my very simple story. How about you, Lila?
Hi! Okay. So, mine is a bit of a long story. It also can get it's a bit deep. So here is my life story, I guess. So,
I love it every time you say that.
Otome is my OI is my life. I really need to stop obsessively reading these. So anyway, it all started when I was a child. No, just kidding. So when I was 13, between the ages of 13 and 16, I got really into classical literature. And so we didn't mention it before, but a lot of OI is roughly based on Renaissance Europe and has a lot of nobility factors. And so I really loved classical literature. My favorites were Jane Eyre. I loved Sensibility. I loved what's her name? I don't remember her name. Well, the author of. I really loved just immersing myself in these like older times, you know, and just like feeling what were like then, and it just feels more closer to who we are as humans. So, and as you can tell from that background, I feel as if I was destined to find OI villainous isekais and be very attracted to them. I've always loved like Renaissance, like those those princesses, the gowns, just that not well more than aesthetic. I loved like the essence of it, just like I don't know how to explain it. Like I've always wanted to go to a ball. Still haven't. I tried recently. So how I got into villainous isekais, fast forward a couple of years later. So I was having like the hardest time of my life. I got very depressed because I had just broken up with a friend for the first time in my life. Like, I know that's hard to imagine. You would think that I would have broken up with a friend before, but usually I've never had to. Like, I've never had to break up with someone. It's usually just fading away and occasionally, like, talking to them again once every 5 years. But because of that, I had a lot of self-loathing, and I just every day was like really painful. This is getting dark. It's like really painful. And I kept getting these advertisements, villains are destined to die. And I thought the name was so cringy. And I just like kept dismissing it and dismissing it and dismissing it until one day I decided to click. Out of annoyance, I decided, okay, what is this about? I will click on it just to get it out of my face. And I didn't expect to like it. And the moment that I read it, I felt so much empathy coming from the character themselves. Like, I could deeply empathize with the character, and it really helped me have self-forgiveness to read this story about these characters where no one is directly the villain, but everyone is gray, even the main character. And there's so much humanity in it, and that really helped me deal with my self-loathing. Because there's this girl that's perceived as a villainess, and I will say, like, I always have this perception of myself as bad, like, my entire life. And so, like, I really, like, felt like someone being isekai'd into a villainess and then just having to live that life and end up being deserving of love too, And so that's kind of how I got into Otome Isekai. Oh, and then after I got into death, there's the only ending for the villainess, which is for it. I just read endless villainess isekais just to bet my weight for that one. Yeah, but that's the story of how I got into.
Alright, so that leads us into our next topic. Kind of neatly, I think. What is your favorite otome of all time? I bet I can guess, but...
Well, you know what mine is. But what is yours?
Mine is actually an otome game, and it's not very popular. Well, there's two, but it's mainly, one of them is extremely popular, and then the other one is not. The popular one is Pio Fiore, which is essentially about people in the mafia.
Oh?
Yes, so the main character is a sister in training at the local church in a specific town in Italy. And this is, I want to say 1950s. Because they have semi-modern guns and automobiles and stuff, but, like, it's still very much that 1950s feel to the era. You know, typewriters, the streets are largely dark at night, and, of course, that was about the time when the Mafia was extremely powerful.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, okay, so is just for the viewers understanding, is this a Japanese Otome game or is this a Korean one?
It's a Japanese one. I don't think I've ever actually played a Korean Otome game. Not because I don't want to, but because they're not really on the main system that I play them on, which is the Nintendo Switch. And I actually don't know what any of them would be, so... first off, I can only play ones that have been translated into English, and that is largely the ones from Japan.
Okay.
So, Pio Fiore is like, you are a nun in training, and then, there's this special thing about you, and it's spoilers, so I won't go much further into it other than that one of the main 3 mafias in the town is technically supposed to protect your character. And the other 2 wouldn't even really know who you are, except, of course, one night, the 3rd one, the Chinese mafia, actually tries to kidnap you, and from there the route will change depending on the choices you made during the common route. But all of the all the male leads are mafia people, except for one who is a spoiler. And then antics ensue depending on which one you pick, and whichever one you pick will lead to them running the city.
Okay, so how did this end up being your favorite?
First off, it's the first one I played, and second off, I haven't really seen another one of the same quality. The other one that I like isn't the same quality, but it's still really good. It's just absolutely adorable. And that one is Paradigm Paradox, and that one is essentially gender-bent superheroes. But with a very heavy post-apocalyptic twist.
Okay.
I won't go much further into it. That one is very much not popular at all. To the point where, like, on the Otome Games subreddit, every other game has, like, a walkthrough, and then that one they just mentioned, oh, it wasn't very good, and I was like, it wasn't smutty, that's all.
Oh, I remember you talking about that before.
Yes. But that said, those were my favorite ones.
Okay.
There are others that I've read or played, but those are the ones that have stuck with me.
Interesting. Now, one of these days you're gonna have to get me into those games. I'm so cheap, I don't want to pay for them. Yeah. So, I guess I should talk about, villains are destined to die then?
Yes.
Okay.
What about it makes you love it, other than that you heavily emphasized with them?
Yeah, so my favorite, you would never guess is Villains Are Destined to Die. And what I love about it is, okay, so first of all, you can feel like everything that happens there. Like you can feel Penelope's like fears. You can feel feelings. It's something with the way it's like written or just portrayed, but you can just feel what she's feeling. We also get to see like little like nuances of moments that she's like feeling anxieties and stuff like that, where it's realistic, like her getting scared for a certain other character that got in trouble. So I guess I shouldn't spoil things in an introduction podcast. But it's also like the story isn't just portrayed with the story itself. It's the writing, it's the art, and it's not just like beautiful art. Like the art itself, like, is storytelling in this series, because the way so Penelope gets isekai'd into an Otome game. And the way they draw the artwork looks exactly like an Otome game. Like I feel like I am reading an Otome game.
It really does. I've read the series. It really is spot on for the aesthetic. It very much fits the vibes.
Drink to that. And so... Okay, sorry, I lost my thoughts.
I'm sorry,
I also
I do that too.
I don't have a lot of brain cells today, so it is hard for me to describe things well right now. But I promise you, when I do have brain cells, we're gonna dive deep into these analyses. Because I have so much.
You have so much to say, and I have so much to say, so.
Yeah. But where was I? Yeah. So the artist does such a great job in immersing us in the world, and every single character, as I've said before, is gray. Like they aren't good and they aren't bad. Well, I mean, they're all good and bad in different ways, but no one's like truly like the main villain. Like it's just interconnective. You know, I don't know how to explain it right now. It's just a vibe, you know. It's the feeling of it. I've had so many deep thoughts about this in the past, but now that I actually have the chance to talk about it, my brain's just like, oh, buzz, clouds, I think my brain's being isekai'd somewhere.
Oh, no. Have you been hit by Truck-kun recently?
I despise, Truck-kun. Truck-kun is beneath me. Just kidding. I don't know. So, just to clarify that...
Ojo-sama laugh.
I'm the one on the right, by the way, and Saf is the one on the left.
Yes, I'm the one with blue hair, and she's the one in grayscale.
Yes. As you can tell by the types of stories we're telling.
Now, that's not fair. I also like really dark stuff. Pinocchio is extremely dark once you get past the colorful interface. But
I understand nothing.
That said, yeah, you were saying about the reason why you like villains are destined to die, and I think what you're trying to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're trying to say that there is no actual villain, they're just all antagonists to each other.
Well, let's just say there is technically a main villain, but for the most part, everyone is a gray area character. And I feel like it's put that way in order for you to understand that these are humans. Like, they're... Okay, so one thing you should know about Penelope is you can tell from the very beginning that she's very... Like, I can tell because I have been dissociated myself, but Penelope is just really dissociated in this game, but the story indicates, like, shows that... Wait, how did you know? Hello. Hi, Azur. But anyway.
Yes, we do. Thank you for joining us.
Anyway, so... Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. I need to close down the chat. I'm gonna get distracted. One comment we had in this entire thing, we're so popular, we have 3 views. What was I saying? I don't remember now.
Two of them are from us.
My one brain cell is distracted. Yeah, so anyway, I was saying Penelope's, like, dissociated. I forgot my entire point that I was going with. But you can tell, like, she's dissociated, like, she is disconnected, and she's so much in fear when she gets into this game that she feels the need, like the only way for her to be able to handle what is happening is for her to kind of just view it as a game, because in order for her to be able to handle the fact that she can be dead any minute by all these people surrounding her, she needs to view it as a game, otherwise how can she handle it? You know what I mean? like her brain is protecting her in that way. So she tries to, she's very cautious and she's very afraid, and she doesn't see when people are genuinely being nice. And there's a reason for that, which won't be revealed until much, much later. So I will not spoil that.
By the way, this is going to be the first webcomic series that we're going to deep dive into. Every episode we're going to go through a few of the episodes and just sort of talk about the deep subjects within it.
Yeah. But, like, for instance, who should I go into? Like, I don't feel the characters are meant to be pure villains. Like, I don't feel most of the characters are meant to be written that way. I feel like they're meant to be realistic. Like there's more layers to them. They're not just characters. And that screams out in every single chapter. Like, these aren't just characters, but Penelope can't see it, but we do. We, the audience, see that these are more than just characters. But she, like, while she is dissociating, she subconsciously puts herself in Penelope. She empathizes with Penelope, but she doesn't know why, and it's subconscious. And so she really enjoys... Well, not enjoys, but... she doesn't know why she is empathizing so much with Penelope, but she is so immersed in the character that she is in, and she can understand her, and Penelope's pain is her pain, because where she is so much like where she was before, and so she sort of is on this journey to kind of get this catharsis for the things that she could never get redemption for in her other life as a Korean.
Oh yeah.
I know it's a terrible explanation. I'm sorry.
So sad. I feel for her so badly whenever I see the first few chapters where they go over her backstory.
Yeah, but I think we should probably move on to the next thing. Well, I don't remember what we're on actually.
Well, what other series do you want to talk about in this podcast? Or what you've read recently?
honestly just whatever is on my brain, and I'm like, I need to talk about this. um, like, I don't remember what the one before I was reading. I don't want to say what the one I just read was because you will judge me. um, let me see. I don't know. I don't remember what it's called. Let's see. Yeah, I don't remember what I was reading.
Alright, then why don't I tell you one that I've read recently?
Okay, what have you read?
One that I actually just caught up with is I'm Not the Final Boss's Lover. And
I don't think I've heard of that one.
You haven't? Oh my gosh, I have to send it to you. It is actually really awesome. So basically, the main character, like Penelope, is isekai'd into a game. Although this one isn't strictly an otome game. It's actually more of a fantasy adventure game. But the thing is, it pretty much turns into an otome situation really quickly because she is one of the characters that the main character can recruit in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a game similar, I would say, to Fire Emblem. In that you pick up a unit, you raise its level to get different skills, and then you use that to fight the big bad of the game, which in this case is the Demon King. But the thing is, and this isn't a spoiler because it's explained within the first few chapters, the game actually requires 2 playthroughs in order to beat. The first one, you will inevitably fail to kill the Demon King. You'll actually beat the Demon King, and then he will be reborn as the male lead, because the male lead is the Demon King's secret core.
What?
Yes, the male
lead. Did you
lead.
say the male lead is the Demon King's secret whore? What?
Secret core, C-O-R-E. My gosh.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I was like, this is a very interesting why. I wonder why you're so interested in this. If you want to know what that is, we describe it not very well because we're kind of just talking about our own definitions rather than the official definition. You can go back to the very beginning of the stream.
For a quick overview, though, it is everything. There is otome of everything.
Tommy, do you know what shonen is, Azur? Oh my god.
And this is immortalized in our chat.
Immortalized now. Anyway, moving on. What were you saying, Seth?
Broadly speaking, let's just go ahead and give a quick overview of it because I'm sure there are other people who are going to be curious too because we really did not explain it that well in the beginning.
I have a link. Let me find it real fast. You can talk about it while I look for it.
So an otome game, or an otome isekai, or an otome comic is largely considered a story that's basically a dating simulator. The main character is a girl, almost always. In fact, I think it is always in order to be an otome series. And the thing is, they are either in a situation where they'll be dateable with several men, or it'll be a story about sort of an otome world. For example, villainous isekais are almost always otome game inspired, so they'll actually have an otome game as the background for the series. But largely it's just the vibe of the main character is a girl, and one of the key aspects of the story is she has to end up with one of the male leads, or the dateable guys. In otome manhwa and manga, and anime also, love triangles are a very big thing that happens because how else are you going to show multiple love interests who are into the same person? One of the best examples of that sort of story is All Routes Lead to Doom, the anime and light novel and manga series, which actually also has its own otome game now, so it's come full circle. But generally that's what the genre is. It's essentially either the vibe of or actually a story about a girl and which guy is she gonna date. But the nuances of the story are all different. Some of them are super light, where it's just basically a school drama, and some of them are super duper dark, like that Villainesses Are Destined to Die story, where
Or
literally she can die.
Roxanne. Roxanne is very dark. Some say edgy, but I say dark. I don't care what you say.
It can swing between the two, actually. It just depends on what story is going on.
I am passionate about it. I will never submit to that description.
I enjoyed the series too. That does not mean that I don't also consider it sometimes bordering on edgy.
So there's actually like two main categories for guys, like the main ones that fall into the modern category. There's like dark isekais and there's wholesome isekais. Dark OIs and wholesome OIs, and there tends to be a split in what you're attracted to. I don't mean like all OIs like neatly fall in each category, but what I've noticed is like people who really like dark OIs, not everyone, but people who really like in the mood for dark OIs tend to like be perturbed by the wholesome OIs because deep to them, and then people who like the wholesome OIs feel like graphic and disturbing.
And then there's people like you and I who can easily do either one.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, well, now, like, it depends on my mood, but, like, at one point I was, like, heavily in the dark eyes. Like, I just did not like the whole eyes. I didn't like them at the time. But now I'm kind of, like, reading both of them because I can appreciate the actual subtle nuances in the wholesome OIs that I was too stuck up my nose to, like, appreciate. You know, I feel like the wholesome OIs, not all of them, but some of them can get really, intersocial or interrelational in ways where they show conflict that's more, like, nuanced in that sense. Like, the one I like is, she's a stepmother now. She was the aunt of the kid. I don't remember the name of it. But, basically
Stepmother's Markin?
No, not that one. It's like...
Oh, okay.
It's not, I'll flip the script. I don't think that's it. Or maybe it is. Hold on. Let me look up this real fast. We'll get back to you on this commercial break.
Why don't I answer some of Asher's questions while you look for that?
Okay.
So, this is not actually about the literal art style, although that does play an aspect of it. There is a huge difference in the wholesome, mainly manhwa, otome art style versus the dark one, which is... The dark ones actually tend to look more like an actual otome game, and the lighter ones tend to look like a typical anime or donhwa or whatever the Korean word for it is. And then the color palettes tend to be vastly different, but that's more to do with the artistic aspect of storytelling. It's just that there's like she says two, but I consider it three different, very broad subgenres to otome games. There's the wholesome ones, the dark ones, and then the one that is specifically villainous, because villainous manhwa and manga can go the gambit within one series between dark, wholesome, and then back to dark. So, I just consider them their own thing.
I found it. It is indeed villainous flips the script. That is the one I am that I cannot think of.
Oh, time to change the genre.
Because that one is a more wholesome.
Yes,
I mean,
really
wholesome doesn't mean it doesn't have like dark conflicts in it. I just categorize this one as wholesome. Okay.
Based off of the vibe.
No, unexplained. It's just the vibe. Yes, it's the vibe. Like
I love that we have an
in-joke
like... the very first one. It's like, no one who watches the later ones is gonna understand why we keep saying vibe.
We should just mention it every time in the intro. Like, hey, just a reminder, if you hear us say vibes, get your tea ready, because we're about to start. And every time you say in part of this podcast, every time we say vibes, you take a sip.
Alright. The next thing we were going to talk about is...
Right? Or, no, we're on 6, technically. I don't think we actually...
Yeah. We can talk about what is the meaning of a villainous isekai, like what makes it different from a regular one. Although I did actually touch on that a little bit earlier, in that I feel like villainous isekais tend to really run the gambit within even a single series between wholesome and dark, because the very idea of a villainous manga, manhwa series is that they are trying to overturn the fate of the original game, where they're basically on their way to doom because they're the antagonist of the game.
Alright. We're on number 6, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I spaced out, I'm sorry. I'm very spacey. I will sometimes I'll not...
It's okay, it's our first time and no one's watching. We're safe.
Oh, but we got another viewer, so someone else is watching.
I know.
No,
we've had them for like a half hour.
Yes. I'm really awkward and I don't know when to start things, so should I go ahead and start,
Yeah.
Okay. I am so sorry. We'll work this out. We'll work out these kinks as we go on and do more.
Or we won't, and that'll be part of the R vibe.
Oh yes, the R that no one else but us knows. So, for me, literary works have different genres kind of have an overarching moral or motive to them. And things as are. And so for villainous, so a lot of people think that they're just trash and, you getting more, but I like some morals that they're actually trying to portray that can be taken, and that I have hammered this down throughout this entire stream, and I am so sorry, but I'm gonna say it again. Like, villainous isekais are stories of self. And I don't mean you're forgiving the douchebag duke that you're like, I hate him so. I mean, for instance, you go into the body of a villainess, someone who's, hated by everyone. Going to be hated by everyone. And you have to, basically heal that villainess and understand them in order to keep going, and you have to find out like the center of their pain so you can know how to go. You have to learn how to
I'm sorry.
Well,
you
okay.
keep cutting off. Oh, give me just a moment. Let me see if I can
Oh,
fix
okay.
this.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's try this. Give me just a moment.
It's their fourth person. They left us. I don't know who you were, but you were special to me. I will never forget you.
They're still there.
There's only 3 people, though. It's me, you, and Azur.
Oh well.
Okay. We'll get love one day. How do I explain this?
Saying,
okay, so basically, like it's a story of there's morals of grayness, you know, and that people are human.
Mm.
And by human I don't mean like, oh, they just murdered my friend. They're so human. I should like hug them. No, that's not what I mean when I say that. I just mean like there's darkness in us all, and if we don't watch ourselves, we can become that darkness. But it doesn't mean like for the villainess that she's not deserving of being loved or any of that. And I feel like as a character who's in the villainess, like they have to figure out how to. Okay, so I hate this. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. But it like self-forgiveness, not forgiveness from other people to you, but like forgiving yourself kind of thing.
Mm.
And that's kind of like the comfort I've gotten from villainous isekais is just like I don't mean. Okay, so there's an aspect of this I really hate, and I will lead into our 7th point through this, just so you know.
Mm.
But basically, they have to get the villainess to be deserving of love. But the thing is, like, the reason why I prefer Penelope over a lot of other villainess stories, like the villainess lives twice. No, maybe not that one. There's others. I just can't think of one that's specifically in my example. It's this one where she's like this tyrant. It got canceled on this main website at chapter 40, so it's probably still going. But the reason why I like Penelope is like she's not saying like, oh, I'm all good, so suddenly everyone loves me. She's making Penelope herself be loved. Like she's loving Penelope herself, and she's not saying Penelope is undeserving of love. But in others, okay, so this is a trope I really hate. I really hate it whenever someone isekais into the villainess, and then they completely change their personality, and they basically become loved and all that, but it's like saying like, oh, this person before you didn't deserve to be loved, like they had, and that's a trope I don't like. That's a nuance, a little mirror of the same thing I'm talking about, where I don't like it, because to me, I feel like that kind of ruins the whole thing, because that's why I read villainess stories, where I kind of like the story of being in someone else's shoes that you absolutely don't think should should be loved in any way, and in the process you kind of understand, like, hey, I don't know what it's like to be someone else, so and until I'm in their shoes, I can never understand what it would be like to be here, even though I don't approve of what they've done, and what they've done is evil or bad. There's more to this than I have the right to talk about, and I can't say that in the same situation I wouldn't have fallen into that as well, you know, in just like that humbleness.
Mm-hmm. I understand why you don't like that, and I mean, depending on the execution, I agree that is very much not it. But the thing is, I think there's a difference between you entering a villainess's body who has already done all of the horrible things, and you entering a villainess's body and nothing have happened yet because it's before the actual main story. And what I don't like about stories like that is then the main characters are always caught up in, oh, I'm destined to be hated no matter what I do, when demonstrably they're not. And I hate that they can't see that, and I'm like, you are supposed to be a 30-year-old woman. You're definitely not acting like a hormonal teenager. You're acting like an actually mature person, and then you're running from the very idea that you could be liked even if the original couldn't. And what really gets me is, like, when they're constantly like, oh, the main story has changed, but they're still obsessed with the idea that they're gonna get persecuted.
I get that. Yeah, I get frustrated at that too. I just want to clarify. I don't mean they don't work for the love. Like,
oh no, the thing is, yes. Even in the stories that Aqua doesn't like, they do work for their love. In that, even if they do a complete 180, it's not like the other characters immediately start fawning over them. They do have to actually show that they're different from the original. The thing is, there is that element of only a different person could be loved, but I don't see it like that, because a lot of the time they have the two of them sort of merge into a single person. Like, they'll have the memories of the old person, and whether they're another person or not, those memories will still have an effect on you. It's basically the difference between someone who knows what it feels like to be loved or to love themselves, and someone who never had that chance, because again, most of the time it's like 30-year-old women who are put into teenagers. Like, these are women who've already had the chance to grow, and the only difference between them and the main character sometimes is that they've had that chance to grow and change, whereas with the story of the original, they don't get that chance. Their life is cut short.
sorry. No, but that makes me think of another thing that I don't like. Actually, no, I forgot entirely. I was like thinking of it as we were talking, and now I don't remember. No! No! No. I need brain juice. Okay,
Drink your tea. It will give you brain juice. Alright, now then, the main thing I don't like, because I'll just give you a moment to think.
Okay.
The main thing I don't like is when the writing is poor. That's what makes me think a story is, like, a low-quality OI. The art can change style, as long as it's not, like, distinctly ugly to look at, I don't care. But if the story isn't actually well executed, if the characters keep changing every other panel, if their choices are extremely inconsistent, like typical writing problems, that's when I start to think that an OI is not in any way, like, worth reading. Like, let me give you an example of a bad OI. There's a couple of them, I don't remember their names, but there was one, the main character was a child, and yet, even though physically they are a child, they're, like, acting. And, they just... Everyone completely ignores the complete change in how they're acting. So, for example, a crown prince who is supposed to be all logical and cold, and then one person comes around, be they the villainess who's been reborn or the original main character, and they do a complete 180. And it's like, that's not the power of love. That's a guy who doesn't actually have opinions and just does whatever he has the people around him say. And when you have an entire cast of characters like that, or the plot just doesn't make sense, that just screams to me the writer didn't actually plan anything. They were just trying to get a number of tropes together. Also, yes, that would be lovely as a dynamic.
I kind of... Okay, so what I mean by that is, like, when someone isekais into the villainess... I'm addressing Azur right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so the reason why I have a problem with, like, them suddenly being, like good, is because it's like, oh, so it's not that the original villainess shouldn't have worked for, like, that acceptance or whatever. It's not even about that. It's more like, it's like, oh, she's an entirely different person. Oh, like, I absolutely abhor this person I'm in. I mean, which it can be reasonable, but it's like, I will be an entirely different person, which, I mean, and I don't mean that in the way of, like, oh, the villainess should have been an entirely different person anyway, as in, like, oh, I'm gonna do different things and change my life. I don't mean like that. When I say that, I mean more like, okay, so the original person who was the villainess, because keep in mind, like, these are gray characters, like, we're, a lot of the genre is kind of seeing more, humanist in those villainesses.
Mm-hmm.
Then what it feels like is, it's like, the person that she came into is never deserving of love. And I don't mean from her actions, I mean, like, just as, like, a person. Like, I'm not saying, like, from her actions she deserved love, but as a person, like, I don't know how to explain that. It's like...
Well, if you don't know how to explain it, we can explore this again in a later podcast. You can have, like, actual examples that we can talk about.
Yeah, I just feel like without going into the nuance of it, it sounds controversial. But I don't know.
And this
it
feels
feels
like something we
saying,
have to devote
unless...
an entire episode to, so...
Yeah. Alright, well, that's all I have to say, personally.
And that is actually good timing, because it's about time for us to end. Stay tuned for announcements. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want. We will announce when our next one is, once we have the exact date. And depending on things, you might just be me or me with a guest. So... have a wonderful day.
All right, bye. Have a good day, guys. Thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone. We enjoy that all of you watched. And yeah, goodbye. For now.